1:22 a.m. Gulf of Oman, 47 nautical miles southeast of Muscat. An Iranian coastal radar station just began tracking a U.S. Navy guided missile cruiser with a persistence and pattern that U.S. signals intelligence characterized as targeting quality data collection. Not a routine sweep. Targeting quality. The kind of sustained, high-resolution track that produces the target motion analysis needed to calibrate a weapon system against a specific vessel. The Iranian station had been tracking the USS Lake Erie for 41 continuous minutes before the characterization was flagged. American Air Patrol assets entered the area 29 minutes later. Welcome to Navy Strikeforce. Today, we're going inside the 166 minutes that followed that intelligence flag. 166 minutes in which a sustained Iranian radar tracking operation against the most capable air defense vessel in 5th Fleet's Gulf inventory. An American Air Patrol response calibrated to communicate a specific message about the cost of sustained targeting quality collection, and an intelligence exploitation effort that uncovered a coordinated 3-station collection program operating against 6 U.S. warships simultaneously produced findings that changed how 5th Fleet managed radar threat assessments across the entire theater. This is what it looks like when the threat is not a missile or a boat, but information. Information being collected from a shore-based position in international waters, with no laws being broken and no action that the rules of engagement directly authorize a kinetic response to. And why the response to that kind of threat requires a calibration that is in some ways more difficult than responding to something that shoots at you. To understand why a coastal radar tracking a U.S. warship for 41 minutes warranted the response it triggered, you need to understand what targeting quality track data actually enables and why it matters to Iranian operational planning. A radar conducting a routine area search sweeps repeatedly across its coverage zone, generating momentary contacts on vessels within range. Dwell time measured in fractions of a second per pass. A radar conducting targeting quality data collection on a specific vessel does something fundamentally different. It maintains a sustained, high update rate track on that vessel continuously, collecting speed, heading, bearing, and maneuver data over a period of many minutes. The data accumulated in a sustained targeting track is used to build a target motion analysis, a mathematical model of the vessel's movement behavior that enables the projection of its future position with the precision required to program a weapons systems guidance solution. The distinction between routine search radar and targeting track operation is detectable from outside the station. The emission signature, radar update rate, beam dwell time on a specific bearing, transmission power density, changes measurably when a radar transitions from search mode to sustained track mode. U.S. signals intelligence assets monitor Iranian coastal radar emissions continuously and characterize each emission event against a database of known operational profiles. The 41-minute sustained track on the Lake Erie had been generating emissions consistent with a targeting track profile throughout, but the automated characterization system required a 40-minute sustained observation window to generate a targeting quality classification with sufficient statistical confidence. 40 minutes of targeting quality data collection before the automated system generated a flag. 41 minutes before anyone in the Lake Erie's crew had any awareness of the operation being conducted against their ship. The Lake Erie's commanding officer received the intelligence flag at 1:22 a.m. His first action was a maneuver, an immediate course change of 20 degrees and a speed increase from 14 knots to 22 knots. The course change altered the Lake Erie's future position, trajectory relative to the projection that 41 minutes of steady-state track data would have generated, degrading the accuracy of any targeting solution built from that data. It also forced the Iranian station to discard its accumulated target motion analysis and begin building a new track from a vessel now on a different heading and at a different speed. The maneuver was correct. It was also revealing. A vessel that executes a course, change, and speed increase at the precise moment it receives intelligence about being tracked has either detected the tracking itself which would require onboard electronic intelligence capabilities, characterizing the Iranian station's emission, or has received an external intelligence warning. Either way, the Iranian radar operators observing the Lake Erie's sudden course and speed change at 1:22 a.m. had confirmation that their operation had been detected. The 41-minute window of undetected collection had closed. This is the recursive intelligence problem at the center of every sustained radar tracking confrontation in the Gulf. The act of responding to being tracked reveals information about the detection system and the response timeline. Data that has operational value to the adversary independent of whatever targeting data the tracking itself collected. Not responding allows the tracking to continue building, targeting quality data. Responding forces the station to restart its collection, but documents the detection threshold. There is no option that gives nothing away. At 1:24 a.m., 5th Fleet received the flash report and began generating response options in parallel. The Lake Erie's commanding officer had already requested air support at 1:23 a.m. The request went to the P-8, a Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft on orbit 90 nautical miles south, which was the closest available aviation asset. The P-8A was immediately retasked to move north toward the contact area. Transit time, approximately 17 minutes. The P-8A carried no weapons, but had significant sensor capability, its own radar, electro-optical systems, and signals intelligence collection suite. And its repositioning over the contact area would add an airborne intelligence collection layer to the operation, while also establishing a visible overhead presence. But 5th Fleet's assessment of the situation went beyond the immediate tactical options available from the P-8A. The USS Lake Erie was not a random target. She was a Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser, the most capable air defense platform in the standard U.S. Navy surface combatant lineup. The Ticonderoga class carries a larger SPY 1 radar array, a deeper SM-2 and SM-3 missile magazine, and a more comprehensive combat direction center than the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers that make up the majority of 5th Fleet's surface combatant force. In any carrier strike group or surface action group operating in the Gulf, the Ticonderoga-class cruiser serves as the primary air defense commander, the vessel whose combat systems and tactical picture are central to the air defense coverage of the entire formation. If Iran's operational planning included a scenario in which Iranian missiles needed to penetrate a U.S. naval formation's air defense umbrella, then having comprehensive target motion analysis on the formation's primary air defense commander was not an incidental intelligence benefit. It was a foundational targeting prerequisite. The Lake Erie had been selected because she was the most important vessel to defeat in any scenario where Iranian missiles needed to get through. This assessment was incorporated into the 5th Fleet guidance transmitted at 1:27 a.m., which authorized the tasking of 2 A-18F Super Hornets from Carrier Air Wing 8 aboard the USS George H.W. Bush operating in the northern Arabian Sea. Mission designation: Air Patrol. Transit to the Gulf of Oman contact area at maximum speed. ETA: 22 minutes. Arrival on station: approximately 1:51 a.m. The Air Patrol mission parameters were not standard. The guidance specified an approach vector that would take the aircraft within 45 nautical miles of the Iranian coastline, within clear radar visibility of the tracking station, and a minimum patrol duration of 40 minutes. The 40-minute minimum was not an operational coincidence. It matched the 40-minute sustained collection window the Iranian station had used before the detection flag was generated. The message was precise. You spent 40 minutes collecting on this ship. We will spend 40 minutes making the cost of that collection visible to everyone in your chain of command who needs to authorize the next operation. Communicating consequences through duration, not just presence. While the Super Hornets were in transit, the P-8A arrived on station at 1:39 a.m. and immediately began close-range signals intelligence collection on the Iranian station's emissions. The P-8A's closer-range collection generated a more detailed emission profile than the initial satellite-based signals intelligence that had flagged the tracking event. Enough resolution to identify the specific radar variant in use, which in turn matched a profile in the intelligence database associated with a specific Iranian coastal defense unit. Unit identification from a radar emission is a significant intelligence outcome. It allowed analysts to connect this tracking operation to a specific organizational element of Iran's Coastal Defense Command, and to examine that unit's operational history. When it had been active, what it had tracked previously, and what other units in the same command network had been doing in the same time period. The analysis that the P-8A's unit identification enabled began producing results at 1:47 a.m. Two other coastal radar stations, one in the Strait of Hormuz region, one in the northern Persian Gulf, had conducted sustained tracking operations against U.S. naval vessels in the preceding 96 hours. Both operations had used the same operational profile as the Lake Erie tracking: 40-plus minute sustained tracks, targeting quality emission signatures during low traffic hours when background radar activity would be least likely to mask the sustained tracking emissions. Both operations had been logged by the Signals Intelligence Monitoring System. Neither had generated a characterization flag during the collection period, because both had occurred during windows of elevated background radar activity that had raised the automated system's confidence threshold for a targeting quality classification. The tracking had occurred, the data had been collected, no flag had been generated, no air patrol had been dispatched. The Lake Erie case had been detected only because the background activity had been lower at 0:41 a.m. on this particular night. 3 separate sustained tracking operations in 96 hours. 3 different stations, 3 different target vessels, all using the same operational profile. This was a program, not an incident. The preliminary intelligence assessment completed at 1:52 a.m. characterized the pattern as a coordinated, multi-station effort to build a comprehensive targeting database on U.S. naval air defense assets in the Gulf theater. The number of target vessels covered by the program when the historical tracking data from all 3 stations was analyzed together was assessed at 6. 6 specific U.S. surface combatants that constituted the primary air defense coverage for carrier strike groups and surface action groups operating in the Gulf and Gulf of Oman. 6 vessels, a systematic effort to build targeting quality data on every ship standing between Iranian missiles and their intended targets. The Super Hornets, Viper 1 and Viper 2, arrived on station at 1:51 a.m., exactly as calculated, and descended to 2,000 feet over the contact area. They established an orbit pattern visible on the Iranian station's radar, weapons configured, navigation lights off. The Iranian station had maintained its tracking of the Lake Erie on her new course and speed from 1:22 a.m. until 1:57 a.m. At 1:57 a.m., 6 minutes after the Super Hornets established their patrol pattern, the targeting quality sustained track ceased. The station continued area search operations at standard power levels, but the sustained track on the Lake Erie was over. Total duration of the tracking operation: 76 minutes, of which 41 had been undetected. The Super Hornets maintained their 40-minute minimum patrol through 2:31 a.m., conducting the full duration specified in their mission parameters before returning to the bush. The P-8A maintained its collection orbit for an additional 34 minutes, completing its emissions characterization of the station and the surrounding electronic environment before returning to base. The Lake Erie resumed her standard patrol course at 2:09 a.m. The post-incident assessment, completed over the following 2 weeks, produced findings that the 5th Fleet Operations Staff characterized as the most significant intelligence product generated by a non-kinetic Gulf incident in recent years. The coordinated 6-vessel targeting program had been running for at least 96 hours before the Lake Erie detection provided the entry point for the analysis. During those 96 hours, 2 of the 6 target vessels had been tracked successfully without detection. Their tracking events had not been recognized in real time, and the data collected had been accepted into the Iranian targeting database without any U.S. response occurring. The automated characterization system's confidence threshold, the 40-minute sustained window required for a targeting quality flag, had functioned as a protection gap for the Iranian program. Operations conducted during periods of elevated background activity could remain below the flag threshold, even while collecting targeting quality data, because the elevated background raised the system's detection threshold high enough to allow a 40-minute sustained track to pass without triggering an alert. The system was recalibrated following the assessment, implementing a dynamic threshold model that adjusted the detection sensitivity based on background activity levels, maintaining the same effective detection probability regardless of background conditions. The recalibration increased false positive flag rates by an estimated 34%, substantially increasing the analytical workload on intelligence staff. The increase was accepted. The assessment also recommended a shift in how radar tracking events against U.S. naval vessels were analyzed, from individual event assessment to pattern analysis, with automated correlation of tracking events across stations and time windows to detect coordinated multi-station operations before a single detected event provided the entry point. Both changes were implemented. Both were responses to a program that had already collected meaningful targeting data on 2 of 6 target vessels before being identified. The Lake Erie's air defense systems remained fully operational. The crew's operational profile remained unchanged. No targeting quality track on any of the 6 identified target vessels had produced an outcome beyond data collection. No missile had been programmed with the collected data. No attack had been attempted, but the data existed. In Iranian operational files, there were targeting quality profiles on at least 2 U.S. Navy air defense vessels that had been collected without detection, without response, and without any cost to the Iranian program. The Super Hornets had spent 40 minutes circling a point 45 nautical miles from the Iranian coast to communicate that sustained radar tracking has consequences. But the data collected in the 2 undetected operations had no consequences attached to it, only the one that was caught. Stay sharp, stay informed. This is Navy Strikeforce. We'll see you in the next one.